Most nations imagine their beginnings as inevitable, as if unity were waiting patiently, delayed only by circumstance. Germany disrupts that belief. For centuries, the idea of a single Germany existed clearly enough to be named, discussed, feared, and postponed. What was absent was not awareness, but convergence, not vision, but willingness. Unity did not fail to arrive because it was unknown. It arrived late because something else persisted longer. This inquiry examines why Germany unified so late, not through leaders or wars as causes, but through a recurring historical pattern, the role of restraint shaped by fear. The focus is not on dates or treaties. It is on repetition across time, on how societies hesitate when unity threatens to dissolve protections that fragmentation quietly provides. The question is not why Germany eventually united, but why it waited so long when so many forces seemed to push it there. For much of European history, what we now call Germany was a dense mosaic. Hundreds of territories, cities, duchies, bishoprics, principalities, each with its own customs, obligations, and internal rhythms. This fragmentation was often described as weakness. But weakness can be stable. Fragmentation distributed risk. No single failure could erase the whole. No single mistake could consume everything. In that sense, division functioned as a buffer. The idea of a unified Germany appeared early. Language connected regions. Shared stories circulated. Legal traditions overlapped. Cultural memory moved freely across borders that armies respected, but people did not always feel. And yet, the idea remained suspended, recognized but restrained, repeated but delayed. Across centuries, attempts at greater coherence surfaced and receded. Each time, the pattern repeated. Unity promised strength, but it also threatened exposure. To unify meant to remove layers of insulation that local autonomy provided. Local rulers feared losing relevance. Cities feared losing privileges. Communities feared being absorbed into something less familiar, less predictable. Fear did not always speak loudly. Often it disguised itself as prudence. The Holy Roman Empire embodied this tension. It was neither fully unified nor entirely disordered. It allowed the idea of collective identity to exist without demanding its completion. This partial structure preserved ambiguity. Ambiguity can feel safer than clarity when consequences are unknown. The empire endured not because it resolved contradiction, but because it contained it. As Europe changed, pressure mounted. Economic networks expanded. Ideas traveled faster. External powers consolidated. Comparison sharpened awareness. Germany's fragmentation began to look increasingly out of step. But awareness does not automatically produce action. Often, it intensifies hesitation. The Reformation introduced another layer. Religious division did not simply fracture belief. It reinforced local loyalty. Faith aligned with territory. Difference became rooted in place. Unity now carried the risk of moral coercion, not just political rearrangement. To unify meant to choose, and choice, at scale, creates losers. Fear multiplied. Centuries later, the Enlightenment introduced new possibilities. Reason, shared humanity, universal principles. These ideas suggested that unity could emerge from common understanding rather than force. But even here, restraint persisted. Ideas moved faster than structures. Intellectual unity outpaced social trust. People could imagine a shared future while still doubting its safety. Napoleon's presence briefly imposed coherence from outside. Borders shifted, institutions reorganized. For a moment, unity appeared as an external fact rather than an internal choice. But imposed unity leaves residue. Once removed, it can deepen suspicion. When coherence arrives without consent, it teaches societies to associate unity with loss rather than belonging. After Napoleon, the pattern returned. Confederations formed. Economic cooperation expanded. Railways connected regions. Markets integrated. Daily life began to feel unified long before identity followed. This lag mattered. Material integration without emotional convergence creates tension. People live within shared systems while still thinking in fragments. That gap generates unease. Fear adapted. It no longer resisted unity outright. It questioned its timing, its form, its cost, who would define it, who would benefit, who would be erased. By the mid-19th century, unity seemed unavoidable, but inevitability is often recognized only in retrospect. At the time, it still felt conditional. Unity arrived not as a celebration of completion, but as a resolution to accumulated anxiety. Delay had reached its limit. Fragmentation no longer protected. It exposed vulnerability instead. This pattern is not unique to Germany. History shows that societies often delay unity until fear of remaining divided outweighs fear of becoming whole. Unity, then, is not born from confidence. It is born from exhaustion, from the sense that repetition has run its course. Germany's late unification reflects a deeper cycle. Ideas appear before readiness. Possibility precedes trust. Belief circulates long before commitment forms. What delays action is not ignorance, but uncertainty about consequence. Fear, in this pattern, is not weakness. It is information. It signals that change carries costs that cannot yet be measured. Societies with long memories tend to move slowly because they remember past dissolutions. They remember what happens when coherence collapses under strain. They hesitate not because they cannot imagine unity, but because they can imagine its failure. When Germany finally unified, it did not resolve these tensions. It reorganized them. Unity did not erase fear, it relocated it. New forms of anxiety emerged. New questions followed. Late unification did not mean incomplete unification. It meant cautious unification. This raises an uncomfortable question. Do societies delay transformation because they misunderstand the future or because they understand it too well? Germany's long hesitation suggests that fear is not always the enemy of progress. Sometimes it is the mechanism that slows momentum until patterns align, until repetition accumulates enough evidence, until restraint itself becomes unsustainable. The story unsettles a common belief about history. That delay is failure. That hesitation is dysfunction. Germany suggests another possibility. That delay can be a form of collective reflection, even when unconscious. A way of testing whether identity can survive coherence. Unity arrived late, but not empty-handed. It carried centuries of unresolved questions with it. Questions about belonging, about difference, about what must be shared and what must remain local. These questions did not disappear after unification. They became internal. Perhaps the deeper pattern is this: that societies unify not when they discover who they are, but when they can tolerate not knowing who they will become. Fear, in this sense, is not a barrier to unity. It is part of its preparation. And when fear finally loosens its grip, it does not vanish. It becomes memory. Germany's late unification reminds us that timing in history is rarely about opportunity alone. It is about readiness for consequence, about whether belief can stretch without breaking, about whether repetition has taught enough restraint. The question lingers beyond Germany. In moments when unity feels delayed, is history stalling or is it listening? If this reflection resonated with you, you can find more explorations like this on Timeless Questions, where history, power, and human nature quietly intersect.